My sister and I blew out the candles on the cake together. Our parents immediately rushed to congratulate her, completely ignoring me. I was used to it, and all I wanted to do was to get out of here. This was impossible, because we were Siamese twins. I spent all of my 18 years inseparably from Lucy. I never liked it, dreamed of traveling, rock concerts, and parties. But my good sister was against it. She loved to embroider, draw, and other tedious things. Boredom. I hoped that one day we would be separated. I would leave my family. Moreover, our folks did not particularly like me because of my explosive nature, but they doted on Lucy. In general, blowing out the candles on the cake, I made a wish. I wanted us to be separated and go around the world. I was tired of being trapped with this nerd. Then Mom's phone rang. For some reason, she immediately turned pale. After finishing the conversation, she looked at us and sighed heavily. Girls, you will be separated. This can be dangerous for your health. There is a risk of developing a fatal disease. What? Did I just hear right? I jumped with delight. I would finally be free. Lucy immediately started whining that she didn't want to be separated. I was even afraid that our parents would listen to her. But instead, Dad snapped that health was not a joke. What if something happened to Lucy? They didn't say a word about me. But I was only thinking about freedom. The day of the surgery finally arrived. Lucy and I were being transported down in the hospital corridor. My palms were sweating with excitement. I couldn't believe I would wake up without my sister. Lucy, as always, was nagging. Siamese twins always needed to be close. I could even see the tears in her eyes. Stop whining. In the surgery room, we were put under anesthesia, and I passed out. I woke up in the room and Lucy was lying on the next bed. We were separated from each other. God, finally. But then I heard a soft sob. Lucy was crying into her pillow. God, what a fool. She should be happy. I was looking forward to being able to party to the fullest. I even planned to go around all the clubs in the city, find a boyfriend, and finally go around the world. But when we were discharged, Lucy immediately asked if I would go to the library with her. No, I had other plans. I wasn't going to go out with Lucy anymore. We were too different. In the evening, I put on makeup, put on a new dress, and went to the best club in town. It was the first time I'd had a good time. The evening was awesome. I enjoyed hanging out and... What? Lucy? My sister was standing off to the side and watching me. What the hell was she doing here? She also dressed up like an old woman in a long gray dress, and she was stupidly made up. At the sight of my sister, I seethed with anger. Even here, there was no peace from her. Pointedly, I turned away and ordered a few more drinks at the bar. But after half an hour, everything swam before my eyes. I didn't even remember getting home. I woke up in my own bed. My head ached horribly, and I tried to remember the night before, but in vain. Damn, I shouldn't have drunk so much. Then Lucy came timidly into the room. I shouted at her, "What do you want again?" Then I noticed that she was holding a tray of water and painkillers. I took the glass and drank greedily, and then told my sister to get out. I was tired of her. Then my phone vibrated. Who else was there? But a message from a guy popped up on the screen. He wrote that I had rocked at the club, and he couldn't forget me, and that he asked me out. That was another matter, of course. The next night, I sat in a cafe with Harry. He seemed like a nice guy, also liked to hang out and punk rock. I even thought, maybe we should start dating. But just as I was about to change the subject, a girl burst into the cafe. She had flowers in her hands and was walking quickly towards our table. I froze. Could it be Harry's girlfriend? He was so handsome. But when she opened her mouth, Lucy? My sister in her stupid makeup shouted something about love and that our breakup was a mistake. She wanted me back. What was she talking about? I told her to shut up, but Harry was already running out of the cafe. I clenched my fists and glared at Lucy. She ruined my date. Lucy explained abruptly that this guy only wanted sex, and she was trying to save me. I could no longer contain my emotions, and abruptly getting up from the table, I shouted that she had got me. After the surgery, she did not leave me alone for a minute. This was unbearable. Lucy tried to say something, but I snapped, "Leave me alone," and quickly left the cafe. When I got home, I immediately opened my laptop. I was so sick of Lucy that I couldn't stand her anymore. I needed to find tickets to any country and go around the world. Traveling was expensive. Where could I get the money? Before I could think about it, Lucy burst into the room. She started to say something about dinner and then stopped. She saw that I was looking for tours around the world. I shut down the site in a hurry, but Lucy understood. She immediately rushed to her parents, shouting that I was going on a trip. I tried to stop her, but the folks had already heard everything. They were furious. What kind of trip? I needed to prepare for exams. But they had money only for Lucy's studies. I clenched my fists in anger. So there was money for Lucy and not for me? But they wouldn't listen. They just told me that I was now under house arrest. I was even more angry with my sister. That evening, I decided to sort things out with her and went to Lucy's room. But my sister was in the shower. What a bad time. I decided to wait for her, and then I noticed a conversation with a girl on the laptop screen. She was confessing her love to Lucy, but my sister replied that she was not yet ready for a new relationship. My head was spinning. So my sister was a lesbian? Right there, next to the laptop, I noticed a picture of myself in a heart-shaped frame and, as if scalded, ran out of the room. All night, I thought about what I saw and remembered how Lucy followed me everywhere, put on makeup for the club, apparently to please me. She even ruined my date. And now this photo in the heart. Oh my god, did my sister fall in love with me? But we were twins. She couldn't fall in love with herself. When I woke up, I immediately went to the website. I needed to get out soon, but the question of money remained. I remembered my parents saying they were saving up for college for Lucy, and I was filled with anger. No way, half of this money was rightfully mine, and I would get it. That night, I crept quietly to my parents' office and cautiously opened the door. My heart was pounding. I tiptoed to the safe just to find a code. With trembling hands, I typed in my mom's date of birth. But the red light came on. Heck, I thought frantically about what it might be and finally decided to enter mine and Lucy's date of birth, and then the lock clicked. Got it. My mouth was dry with excitement. Opening the safe, I saw a pile of bills. I had enough for a year of travel. Out of joy, I immediately grabbed the money when suddenly the light in the office turned on. My legs gave out from fear, and I almost fell when my sister screamed. Thieves! I tried to shut her up, but our sleepy parents came running. They stared at me in shock, and then they started to tirade about how I finally got them with my behavior. No college. I would work at my dad's shoe store for the rest of my life. Not like their darling Lucy. Tears welled up in my eyes. I was sick of hearing about Lucy. I'm your daughter too. Pushing my sister with my shoulder, I ran to my room in tears. My stomach clenched with pain and resentment. I heard Lucy trying to calm our parents down, and after a while, there was a soft knock on the door. Lucy appeared in the doorway. She asked quietly if we could talk, but I just snapped. I have nothing to talk about with you, traitor. But my sister didn't leave. She dragged me to the gazebo where we used to play as children. Yeah, then we were really close. The memory warmed my chest. Lucy suddenly touched my arm and looked into my eyes. But I immediately pulled away. She was my sister. Lucy drooped and said sadly that she loved me. It was a confession. The awkwardness made me want the ground to swallow me up. I looked away and mumbled, "I'm sorry, but I'm not a lesbian like you." I thought Lucy was about to cry, but instead, my sister said in surprise that she was actually into boys too. What? Did she admit that she loved me? Lucy smiled ruefully. "I really love you very much," she faltered and added, "like a sister." I was so ashamed. Lucy said that after the surgery, she had a psychological shock, which she could not cope with. So she followed me everywhere. I was startled, and that girl you wrote to, that you weren't ready for a relationship. She hesitated. She said in a crumpled voice that Mackenzie was actually a guy. He just put a photo of the model on the profile picture. Lucy's voice broke. She said she couldn't imagine life without me. After all, I was always a part of her that was taken away without even asking. Oh my god, Lucy, what a fool I was. I hated her only because my folks loved my sister more. But it wasn't her fault. I couldn't help but hug my sister tightly. I love you too, Lucy, and I want to leave not because of you. It's just that going around the world is my dream, you know. Pulling away, she sobbed that she understood me. She would help me escape. In the morning, Lucy and I sneaked into our parents' office. I was very worried that we would be caught, and I didn't recognize my sister. She was so brave. We went quietly to the safe, but just as I started to type in the code, I heard footsteps in the hallway. Our parents were awake. It was over. But suddenly, Lucy hugged me and whispered, "Fulfill your dream." Before I could answer, she ran out of the office and immediately ran to distract the parents with conversations. My stomach clenched. Thank you, Lucy. I quickly took the money from the safe and ran outside. The nearest bus was half an hour away. For the first time, I didn't want to say goodbye to my sister, but we both realized that the distance between us meant nothing. After all, spiritually, we will always be together. Did you like the video? Subscribe and like it. Support the channel. Thank you. I was very late and ran, pushing aside a crowd of hipsters. Stupid punk festival. But then I stopped short. In the crowd, I noticed my boyfriend walking with some girl, hugging her. Hey, what does that mean? I caught up with him and grabbed his arm. Who is she? But Ron, as if nothing had happened, said that this was his new girlfriend. I was furious. What about our relationship? Ron laughed, saying I cheated on him first. I didn't know what he was talking about. Then Ron showed me a picture of me making out with a bartender in a nightclub. How is this possible? Anxious, I tried to explain that it was probably just a girl who looked very much like me. But Ron wouldn't even listen to me and just left with that girl. Absolutely knackered, I dragged myself to the cafe, where Wendy, my friend, was waiting for me. We were supposed to meet before my important interview. Wendy gave me a quick wink saying, "I see why you're late," but then she noticed that I was as pale as a ghost. I tried to say something, but I couldn't help but then started crying. I told my friend about Ron and the photo we broke up about. I thought Wendy would support me, but suddenly she said I didn't have to lie to her. She was at the party and saw everything with her own eyes. Wendy even talked to me. But I was so drunk, it was clear why I did not remember anything. I had never had a drink in my life. But Wendy didn't believe me, and this was my best friend. I didn't want to talk to her anymore. I looked at my watch and realized I was late for a meeting. I had an important interview scheduled for a position as a journalist for a major publishing house. My parents really wanted me to build a brilliant career. I was out of the cafe in a flash. It took a long time to wade through the crowd of screaming punks to the publishing house, so I came right up to the beginning of the meeting. And then at the entrance, some passing guy crashed into me. A red stain instantly spread across my blouse. That jerk doused me with cheap booze from his bottle. Heck! I ran as fast as I could to the nearest bathroom to wash my blouse. Fortunately, the stain was removed, but I did not have time to dry it in such a provocative way. I looked like a contestant in a wet t-shirt contest. What would they think of me? In addition, now the ugly scar on my right shoulder could be seen. I was embarrassed by it since I was a child. Sighing, I buttoned up my blouse and ran to the interview. Nothing more to lose. As soon as I entered the boss's office, he gave me a disdainful look. Of course, a see-through blouse, and I smelled of wine. Before I could say hello, the boss said sharply that I was not suitable for them, and all because of the blouse? I tried to explain, but the boss handed me a newspaper from yesterday with the headline, "Punk Festival Scandal." It was me in the photo. The article said I was terribly drunk and singing obscene songs. Barely dressed until the police took me away. I shouted that it was complete nonsense. During those events, I was in the library and preparing for exams. But the boss didn't believe me. They don't want people who spoil the company's image. I took the paper with me when I left. The damned hipster girl ruined my life. I needed to find out who she was. With a newspaper in my hands, I went to the stupid festival. It was disgusting to go there, but I, as a journalist, had to get to the bottom of it. I showed a photo of the girl of bunch of punks and asked about her in bars, but everyone said the same thing. I was in the photo and I was cool. Thanks for the help. At some point, I thought, what if this was a prank from someone I knew? Photoshop? But why? Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by a bright flash of fire. I found myself at the fire show site, and then, in the midst of the flames, I saw her. My exact replica was juggling flaming balls. I could see a scar on her left shoulder that looked like mine. Probably she had gotten it at the fire show, but why expose such ugliness? The girl finished her performance, and I went over to her. The hipster girl was taken aback. What the hell? Are you my clone? The girl's name was Alice. She laughingly told me that she too had been pestered by rumors that she had taken off all her piercings and was holed up in a library. I tried to explain to her that my life had suffered much more, but Alice was absorbed in her own thoughts. She thought it was all very funny. Then Alice was interrupted. It was necessary to return to the performance. If anything, copy. You know where to find me. She said and ran back to the stage. I went home in a state of complete confusion. What just happened to me? At home, I told my parents about this crazy Alice and showed them the photo. She was the reason I failed the interview. But they threw the paper away without even looking at it. What if she's my clone or my sister? I did not calm down, but Dad said it was all nonsense. All he cared about was my failure in the interview. Now you have to study twice as much to get into college. He announced that I would be under house arrest until the exams. He and my mom decided that during this festival, I had nothing to do on the street at all. I had to think about my future. Okay, Dad, but I couldn't stop thinking about Alice. Who was she, and where did she come from? We needed to talk again. So I decided to run away from home and get out of the room through the window. I had never violated my parents' prohibitions before, but the truth was much more important. Alice was glad to see me. But I immediately pounced on her and asked why she wanted to ruin my life. But Alice just laughed, said that everything that was being done was for the best, and offered to take part in the fire show together. It'll be spectacular like a fire show of twins, she exclaimed. Well, no. Why would I be waving fireballs half naked? But Alice made a condition. She would talk about herself in detail after my participation in the show. Well, I was willing to do anything to find out the truth. For the sake of complete similarity, Alice made up me as well as herself. We became completely indistinguishable from each other. We practiced a little and the show started. I didn't expect it, but it was such a delight. During the performance, I couldn't take my eyes off Alice. With the fires lit, she looked so free. So confident. No obligations, no cramming, no rules. Oh, I wish I could feel that freedom for a second. I stared at Alice, and the fire I was holding leaned out of my way. My shirt immediately caught fire. I screamed. Alice quickly jumped up to me and put out the fire. The shirt was ruined and I took it off. Then Alice noticed my scar. We have too much in common, Copy, she joked. I looked at her and thought Alice was my complete opposite in character, but I also liked her. Amazing. And then there was the coincidence. The scars, the same appearance, like in the movies. Melanie, go home immediately! I heard someone call out to me. I turned around and saw my mom and dad in the crowd. Heck. I was confused, but Alice, finding out that it was my parents, grabbed my hand and we ran. As we pushed through the crowd, I could hear my parents asking me to stop. Melanie, I'm begging you! I looked back at the moment. Mom and Dad stopped to catch their breath. They looked exhausted. I felt sorry for them, and we approached. When my mother saw Alice and me next to her, she was stunned. She stared at her scar in amazement, trying to say something, and then fainted. But Alice was not confused and called an ambulance. Mom only woke up in the hospital, and the first thing she said was that Alice was my sister. It turned out that we were born Siamese twins, and we had fused shoulders. The separation surgery was supposed to be easy, but the doctors told my mother that my sister did not survive. But now she recognized Alice. She felt that it was her daughter. I knew I was adopted, Alice said. She told me about her mother. She worked as a nurse in a maternity hospital and was childless. Once, in anger, her mother shouted that Alice was not her daughter, and that was why she was so much trouble. And Alice ran away from home. She was always attracted to the free life of punks. It turns out that the nurse just told Alice. Oh my god, I had a sister. I couldn't believe it. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. And Alice kept laughing and hugging us, her real family. My mother's health was not in danger, and we quickly drove home, all together. Alice wanted to stay with us during the festival. My parents didn't mind at all, and neither did I. Soon, I successfully passed the exams, and my house arrest was lifted, so I was able to go to the fire show even though I often hid it from my parents. Alice spent time with her mom and dad. She was glad that she had found her real family. We had been thinking about these changes in us for a long time, and in the end, we decided to switch places. We changed into each other's clothes and pretended that Alice was going to continue hanging out with her punks. But in fact, she stayed at home with her parents. And I went to conquer the expanses of a new, cool life. So, come to the next fire show. I'll rock.